We made this.
Engage!
Tea Earl Grey, hot.
There are times, sir, when men of good conscience cannot blindly follow orders.
What we leave behind is not as important as how we've lived.
I'm Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. Make it so.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Make It So, a Star Trek Picard podcast from the We Made This podcast network. Welcome to this episode, which is Season 1, Episode 6, The Impossible Box. This aired on the 27th of February 2020, which is just about, as we're recording, the same day in which we're recording this. And it sees Picard finally reaching the artifact. The Borg cube is adrift in Romulan space as he searches for Solji. Meanwhile, Narek believes he's found the key to unlocking Solji's dreams, which will help him find a way to the nest, which he and Nerissa have been looking for. As always, we've started our podcast. We have a guest on, and this week we have Brandi Jackola. How are we doing, Brandi? How are you doing today?
I am very well, Kurt. Thank you for asking. I hope you're doing well, although you're probably much more tired than I am because 7-hour time difference.
7 hours time difference, 25 minutes past midnight, and still at work. I'm having the time of my life, and somehow managing to fit a watch of the episode as well. So I'm having great fun.
Well done.
So as I say, with everyone that we've had in the past 5 or 6 episodes, we've asked them how they've got on with Star Trek Picard. How have you found the show so far on the lead up to The Impossible Box?
I've really enjoyed it. There are episodes I've enjoyed more than others, but as a whole, I have really loved it. And I know that there are things that people find issues with, and that's fine. I'm not an apologist, but nor am I going to trash something just for the sake of trashing it either. So I'm an unabashed lover of this show.
That's good news. So I've been really enjoying it. I wasn't on last week's, but my general thoughts at the moment as we head into this episode is that it was a really strong start for me. I really enjoyed it, and as the episodes have gone on, I've found myself waning a little bit. Now, I'm not saying by any stretch of the imagination any of them were bad. I've enjoyed them all, but I just feel the last couple of episodes have been a bit repetitive in certain aspects of the show. So that's something that I'm kind of coming round to. But this episode has brought it back for me. I really, really enjoyed this one. And I think it's going to be a really interesting one. It's going to be a good deep dive. So this one was written by Nick Zayas and directed by Maya Vivilo. What did you make of just general thoughts, really, and marks out of 10 for the episode? I know that we've just spoken off air there that you've said that you've only watched it the once. I've managed somehow to squeeze a second viewing, although it was on a mobile phone. Yeah, I know. It's great, isn't it? But what would you mark it out of 10, and what are your general thoughts on first viewing?
Well, I'm one of those people that I rate things highly, and I base it on my own enjoyment. Right. So it's not, using some kind, wow. It's not using some kind of specific metric of were there issues and stuff like that. No, I'm going based on complete and total enjoyment. So it is going to get 10 impossible boxes out of 10 for me.
10 impossible boxes. I like that. It's for me, I rated Remembrance as 9. I would probably knock Remembrance down to an 8 following the episodes that I've watched. I would say this is probably going to reach an 8.5 and 9 for me. I absolutely love this episode. Everything's come together. It's strong. It's really strong. I do still have little criticisms with it, and I'm sure we'll get into as we get into the episode in more depth. But this one, for me, it felt like everything has kind of culminated, and I would have liked it maybe just an episode or two earlier. But yeah, so as I say, really enjoyed it. I thought the culmination of the two storylines at least coming together now, and the way it ends as well, that it's almost like a crosshair of paths, because we bring them all together and then they end up in separate places. I don't know if you found that as well.
Oh yeah, it actually reminds me a lot of a bit of a D&D campaign from time to time. It's like, okay, we set out with this goal and now we're having to do this thing, and I don't even know what we're supposed to do next. So it was kind of a feeling familiar to me.
I think without further ado, I think we should maybe just dive straight into the episode and look at it in more depth. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Let's make it so.
Let's make it so.
This opening scene, we begin with this dream sequence, which is revisited in the episode a bit later on. But this, for me, personally, is actually one of my favourite opening sequences so far. Because, and I'm looking at this purely from a technical point of view, that the way that the camera was set up with a Dutch angle, really low to the ground, that it was give you that unnerviness, but not only that, the roof as well was angled, so it really gives you that kind of Cabinet of Caligari kind of feel to it, and I thought that was really well done. The way that the camera pushed in on the young soldier, but then when we get to the close-up, it also pulled out as well, and it gave you that really kind of uneasy kind of feel, and that's the way that dream sequences are meant to make you feel. But the way that was done, I absolutely loved that, and that for me instantly gave it a tick in the box. I love it. I absolutely adore a Dutch angle. Anytime I see one, I'm like, yes, that's me, which is great. But what did you make to the dream sequence as an opener? We've had flashbacks, we've had a dream sequence with Data and Picard, obviously in Remembrance. What did you make to the opening and the openings that we've had over the 6 episodes we've had so far?
I am the kind of person that has really vivid and bizarre dreams on a nightly basis. Oh, so I thought, okay, so this is one of my dreams. Got it. And obviously the angles of it made it even feel familiar to me, because it's something I experience in my own dreams. And I thought, well, this is going to be a nightmare. And I was not wrong. But I love the atmosphere that it created with 0 words.
Yeah.
There's like her saying daddy, and that's pretty much it. But 0 words happening there until very close to her waking up. I really appreciated that. I enjoyed it. And I also looked at that little girl and thought, where did they find a little girl who looks so much like Issa? How did they do that?
yeah, we might need to look into that. But yeah, no, I did. I think it opens up a mystery. Again, a lot of the season so far has been this mystery box idea. There's a lot of what is this about? How are we going to find this later on and stuff? And a lot of that I actually really like. I know people have detractors for that, but I actually really like it. And I think that the way that this is set up in that dream logic, and obviously when it comes out of that Dutch angle at the end, we see, we come out of the dream, but the camera kind of zooms up and around to both Narek and Soji in bed together. Now, I have my own issue with, and I'm sure a lot of people have had issues with the Narek and Soji scenes, but for me, the one aspect of their relationship which I've really gotten on board with is the conversations that they've had, especially around the Romulan culture of secrets, and the way, especially here, where Narek is probing Soji in a soft way to kind of get the information that he needs, really. Things like, he says, when he's talking about the Tal Shiar in the previous episode, and would you say that if you were Tal Shiar? Well, yes, I would say that. Or like in this episode where he says, no, that's not Narek, and she says Narek, and he says, no, that's not my name. I really like the wordplay that they've done, and that's one aspect of this relationship that I've really, really enjoyed, the wordplay that's been in there. What have you made to their relationship over the episodes?
Well, it's not something that's ever bothered me. So right. I'm just like, okay, I know exactly what he's doing and I know why he's doing it. However, he is falling for her, and it's become evident in the way that he reacts to his sister and what she says about Soji. And so I've felt for a long time that he's not necessarily of murderous intent, and we can talk about that scene later.
Yeah.
But I think that he's more open to actually finding out the truth than, holding up some kind of agenda of the Zhat Vash or the Tal Shiar or whatever. So I think he's just a little more free-thinking, just a little more than your typical narrow-minded Tal Shiar agent.
I would agree with that, and I think that we aren't even out of the cold open at this point as well. There's three elements of the stories, and there's obviously the dream, finding out what Narek is probing, trying to push that in, but also the scene aboard La Serena where we uncover, we kind of look back at what Jurati did last episode. We also see a lovely couple of things. I won't mention Elnor too much over this episode because he only appears in 2 or 3 bits. But the moments he appears in, the one at the end I'll talk about literally at the end. But the couple of bits that he does appear in, we do see his naivety, and I quite like that the way that he's being played here. There's not much depth to him yet, but the way that the naivety is played with, and that he's saying, yeah, what's this then? Oh, Borg like 7 of 9, things like that, which I really did enjoy. But we also get like a revisit of similar lines to First Contact, where Jurati starts pushing the question about Borg being different and things, and Picard really sort of kind of jumps back in, and we get a bit of exposition about what the Borg are and things, which I appreciate it probably needs to do for newcomers to the show. But we do have kind of a retreading of First Contact here, don't we? And the kind of giving us an idea of where we're going with this episode.
Yeah, I didn't really find it a retread so much as it was, yes, for new viewers, but it was also germane to the story because of the character that he's talking to, not knowing as much about them as he does, because he was a Borg. And so no one is going to have the same insight on that ship at this time than he is about what the Borg are like. So it didn't really feel like a retread to me. It felt like another one of those situations where he's being triggered, because he's going to have that trauma for the rest of his days. That is never going to stop. And certain things are going to trigger him. And that's what happened here. And it really broke my heart more than anything else. Because I just thought, oh my gosh, I know how you feel, man. Because you can't choose when you get triggered. You can't.
Yeah.
And he handled it way better than someone else might have. So I appreciated that scene, and just the sound of his voice just broke my heart when he was speaking those words. Retreading is
probably the wrong type of word.
I get what you mean.
It had the elements of stuff, but yeah. I mean, I actually really enjoyed that. But
callback. Let's get a callback.
Let's put out a callback. But there's also as well, we capture something here that's happened a few times over the Picard ceased to seem not. I'm trying to think what the best word is. It doesn't seem like he's seeing the smaller picture. Like Jurati, for example, Elnor spots that Jurati's going through something. Later on, we'll see Raffi, who's clearly unstable, is and when he gets up to Clapham, and he's trying to boost her morale and things, but it's actually Rios who takes Raffi away. Now, obviously, for story reasons, that needs to happen as well, but there's this feeling that Picard wants to see the bigger picture, and he's the ideals man, but isn't quite capturing the smaller moments and the smaller things that are happening. With the likes of Raffi, where he's in the past he hasn't gone round to say hi like she says in a previous episode, and so it seems like there's these character beats which may well factor in later in the season. But I did feel that coming from Picard on that particular moment with Jurati in this cold open. I don't know if you felt that over the episode or in past ones as well.
No, I have, because I feel like he is practicing avoidance, frankly. He is not completely ready to face his guilt and anguish over leaving Starfleet and leaving all of these people to die when he could have done something different, but wasn't willing to. He wanted to go away and lick his wounds. And oh boy, do I understand that feeling. However, avoiding is not going to solve it. It is going to come back and bite him in a big way. And I think we're going to see that down the road.
The cold open ends with Picard going back to his chateau, his hollow chateau there, and treading through the likes of the treaty. Hugh, the cutest comes up on the screen as well. There's a nice little touch with the layering of Picard's face over the cutest's face, which I thought was quite nice.
Oh, wow. Hurt me. It hurt me in a good way.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really nice touch. And it also brings in, because Hugh, it was interesting how they brought Hugh in, actually, because they didn't really make a big fanfare of it, and I really enjoyed that. But now, because Picard's linked to it, because it is Star Trek Picard at the end of the day, that now Picard's linked to it, we need to get a bit of backstory that, that Picard actually knows Hugh. So from a newcomer, you can see that as, he knows that guy from the Borg cube. So I did think that was a nice little touch as well.
Yes, I loved that. And frankly, I wasn't entirely 100% sure how he was going to receive him. So I thought, well, this is going to be interesting. Let's see what happens.
Well, we'll touch on that.
Yes,
because exactly. I've got my thoughts. I've got my thoughts on that, and it might be different to yours, but I've definitely got feelings on that. When we do come out of the cold open, though, Rios is playing soccer. For those people over in the States,
it should be football here too. Don't get me started on American football.
Okay, well, that's for a whole different podcast. Brandi, that's a whole different podcast. But he's playing football, and the Jurati scene. What did you make? Without me even going into detail, what did you make to that Jurati scene with Rios?
Honestly, this is not the right thing to have be my first reaction, but my first reaction was, "Ew, no, not those two."
Did you see it? Did you see it coming though in the previous episode?
I did see it coming. Yeah. I just didn't want it. I know. There are probably people who are like, no, I totally ship them. I hate that term, by the way, but It's what we use. And I thought I really liked Rios in this scene. He was extremely compassionate and sympathetic and trying to draw her out. And when he asked her, when he says, "Tell me how you're feeling," and she starts saying these words, and I actually felt a twinge of sympathy for her. So well done, Alison Pill. You're a very good actor.
Oh, she's a very good actress. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very. So I just felt like, I actually wonder if he suspects something. And honestly, I think he kind of does. I think he kind of knows that she's not telling the whole story. I think he's more empathetic than we believe. So we'll see in future episodes whether I'm right or wrong, but I think he's got some suspicions.
Well, the thing about Rios is fast becoming my favourite character of the show, obviously after
Picard.
Obviously. Yeah. But the character beats that he's had over the last few episodes, you mentioned the way he deals with Jurati here. Yes, I'm a bit ambivalent with the way that it's handled, but the way that he talks to her and he asks her the probing questions to, are you feeling okay? That kind of thing. But same with Raffi as well later on, and we can get into that. We don't need to necessarily go in order, but the way that Rios has been dealt with is really interesting, because there's been arguments saying that, Raffi's, the depth of her character hasn't been really investigated as much. We're getting more now as we go in. But I really like what they're doing with Rios. I think that there's hints and suggestions that there's something deeper, that, the captain being smashed against the wall, that, he's got these emergency holograms surrounding him, which I think is going to be a major turning point, and, probably psychologically, I think is going to be interesting. I think that will come out really, really, really interestingly. But also just the little lines they're putting in, like sort of when Raffi is in bed and he says something at that point, and he just seems to be, as you say, empathetic. He seems to have real empathy for people, and I think that a lot of people would say, well, we don't know too much about him, but I think they're definitely layering something that's going to pay off later in the season. It feels like they're doing that really coyly, and I actually really like what they're doing with it.
I agree. And I've heard people say that he created these holograms in his own image because he's a narcissist or egotistical. I disagree. I believe it's the exact opposite of that. I believe he hates himself.
Yeah.
These holograms keep him in line.
I've definitely thought that there's an element of struggle, and that this is the way of almost like splitting his personality up into sections, and because he's finding it hard to deal with stuff. I think that's the way I viewed it anyway.
Mm-hmm, exactly. I just think that all these people saying that he really loves himself, I'm like, oh no, I don't think that's the case.
No, I mean, I think as well, if you look at all the evidence sort of points to the contrary, really, doesn't it? Because you've got the book that he's reading about the existential life and death, and
yes,
and the show itself isn't a hopeful show at the moment. Picard is trying to find that. I think that's the whole mission statement of this series, is that Picard has lost everything, that he's lost the world, but he's trying to find some, not redemption, but some form of hope in the world that he now finds himself in, which is a completely different world to where it was in The Next Generation. And I just don't see that linking well with what Rios is doing. If he's saying Rios is a narcissistic Han Solo rogue kind of figure, he's definitely got those attributes. But for me, it definitely feels like he's more of a wounded soul. I mean, you've only got to look at what Jurati says in a few sentences' time, where she says, there's hollow, hopelessness, lonely, and afraid. And I think you could easily assign them to Rios in that way. That he's going through this in a different way to everyone else.
Yes, I agree completely. And it's laid out pretty easily in the very first episode in which we see Rios, where he talks to the hologram about how, his captain's brains got splattered all over the bulkhead and there was nothing that he could do about it. He is blaming himself and has been blaming himself since that incident.
Yeah.
And he is afraid of disappointing other people. And so he doesn't offer a lot. He only does things for money, supposedly. And it's not because he's a jerk. It's because he is scared of failing.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree with that. And he fanboys Picard, which we all do.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, exactly. It's Picard.
Going to another controversial subject. Narissa and Narek. The conversation, this particular scene where they're talking about the little impossible box, which is obviously the name of the episode. I really enjoyed this, which is I've not been overtly against the way that it's been done. I think that the need to have this kind of relationship, but not in the brotherly sisterly way that is obviously the way that they're pushing it. But I do like the way that the characters are different to each other, and I think this nails it on the head perfectly, that the patience that she doesn't have and the patience that he has, but also the empathy. It goes back to that empathy thing that he seems to have for Soji, that he is falling for her, like you say, but that she's very much like a do now, need to get this done kind of person. And this scene with the impossible box and their discussion about how that Narek has found a way into potentially finding out where this homeworld is, I think really works well, and it hasn't in previous episodes. And I think that this one has brought that to a conclusion in some ways, and I think worked quite well. What did you think to it?
I like it. I have thought from the beginning that Narissa, who is obviously older than Narek, who I want to call Karen, and I'm not going to tell that story here of why I call him Karen, but it has to do with the movie and someone writing the name Karen backwards on a window to look like Narek to everyone else. Anyway, so I have always felt from the very first scene that they had together, which she wasn't even there physically, that she had abused him when he was younger.
Right, okay, I've never thought of it that way, but that's interesting.
Yeah, I feel like she has been abusing him basically his entire childhood until he was old enough to defend himself. And that's what I think is the undercurrent between this relationship. Because he can barely stand her.
Yeah.
He does not like her at all. I might even say that he hates her. She did something to him.
Yeah.
That I'm convinced of.
Again, in keeping with the themes of the show, that would be really interesting if they kind of develop that more down the line as well, whether or not we get a coming together of that and that crescendo. We might not necessarily get a backstory about that, but as something in headcanon, I think would be really good to see where that goes, because there's going to have to be a change in tact. He clearly from the episode here, he clearly cares about her. And, she thought she's like using the terms like you love it and you love her, no it. And it's kind of abuse.
You love a program. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's totally changed my outlook on her. Thanks for that. That's great.
You're welcome. I just recognize patterns of people who have been abused, because I have been through abuse. And I recognize the reactions to your abuser. So that may not be what's going on, but that's what I feel is being communicated. So, and I want to ask you something, because I, of course, am an American. And I want to ask you what you think of Peyton List as Nerissa. What do you think of her accent?
It's not something that jumps out at me as bad. I'll put it that way. There's times when you hear Americans trying to be British that it jumps out and it really is bad, but it doesn't come across as that to me. It's very kind of non-committal in accent. It's quite eloquent in some ways. Mm-hmm. So cool. So it hasn't come across as a really bad typical chitty chitty bang bang type Cockney accent or anything. But exactly. But yeah, no. For me, it hasn't come across as that. It's very plain English. It's without going back and listening back to it and really analysing it. It's not jumped out on the from the screen as being that's not an English accent. Put it that way.
Cool. I appreciate that, because she's very good at what she's doing, and I do hear a little bit of the American every now and then, but then she's so perfect on words that would trip up others trying to do a British accent, like anything with the letter U in it. She doesn't say stupid, she says stupid. Right, and that is so perfect. Like, thank you, well done.
Well done for that. I will say though that it's nice that we've got an evil person who's playing a British accent. That's not stereotypical at all.
No, that never happens. That never happens. Only since World War II. That's.
Oh, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
No, but we do get people like Tom Hiddleston and Benedict Cumberbatch and things that that live off that type of thing. So and Alan Rickman, obviously, of course. But yeah, so it's the accent does, as I say, it doesn't jump out as me as something that's untoward. I will be listening out for it now. Now you say that though. So
oh no, I've ruined it for you.
You've ruined it, but then on the other side, you've made it good that I'm thinking about their relationship in a completely different way, and I think that is definitely something that I'm going to be looking out for, because that deepens their characters in such a way that I actually really do appreciate that. And if they have gone down that route and they are thinking about it in that way, then it's certainly worthwhile. And I hope if they are conscious of doing that it will come to fruition later in the season. Yeah,
it's Nerissa's one of those people you love to hate.
So they also talk about dreams as a means of cognitive dissonance, and the way I really like the concept that I was going to say Darj said, but Soji is having this internal conflict inside as well, that the program's trying to get out, that it's trying to be more efficient, that it's trying to find ways of escaping and revealing herself to be, she's been out in the wild now for 37 months. I don't know if you realize this, but it's been 37 months.
Yeah, 37 months. Exactly. 3 years and 1 month.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, but I like the way that that is a brilliant story narrative choice to do that, because it leads into the rest of the episode, doesn't it?
Yes. I love that whole scene with her scanning everything she owns.
Yeah.
And the increasing panic that she's feeling, that she makes very obvious in her actions and also in her facial expressions. It's a really nice piece of work by Isa Briones.
Yeah, and I think the way that Maya Vilio actually directs this episode is wonderful. I think that I've got a couple of notes later on which I'll go into, but the pacing and the way that they edit the entire show, I think we can talk a little bit about it here, really. But talking about the Dutch angles, like I said at the beginning, there's that whole scene. But when they replay the dream sequence later, when she's going through the is it the Zhao Mak? I think it's called, isn't it, Zhao Mak? Mm-hmm. There's like a fractured, like almost like the memory's been fractured, because it's editing's really quick. So there's jump cuts and loads of things going wrong, where in the beginning it was all like, it was a more ethereal, more of a dream sequence that you would expect. As I say, it has that Caligari kind of feeling to it, with all the off-centered diagonal lines that are used to give you that feeling. They use the same footage, but they intercutting it with, they might go back 50 frames, they might go forward, they might jump into the lightning scene a little bit more, they might do various other bits. And that gives you a real feel of rolling momentum and gets your pulse racing a bit more. And you mentioned about the scene where she's with the photographs, the way that's filmed as well, that builds the momentum. But then there's also the more, probably more the edits, but when Picard is on the Borg cube for the first time, that he feels there's all those jump cuts as well. So I think this is why I think that overall this is by far my favorite episode, because there's the pacing goes from slow to fast to slow to a bit of talking, but it never feels rushed. And I noticed as well that the episode is a bit longer. It's about 55 minutes.
Yes.
So, which was an interesting choice as well, because it isn't network television anymore. They can do as long or short as they want. I know that Discovery's had a couple of 36, 37-minute episodes, for example, but it was nice to have that time to breathe. But it didn't feel like 54 minutes worth of TV. It went by in such a quick pace, and I really think the direction and the editing really works to that degree.
Oh, I agree completely. And in fact, when the screen goes to black, and then it's like next week on, and I'm like, I just wanted more.
But you're missing when the screen goes to black. That isn't the end of the episode, though, is it? Choose to live. Yes. Just choose to live.
Yeah,
it's just
but after that, I'm like, okay, so I'm waiting for no, I don't want to see the next week on. I want more. Please continue the episode now. Don't make me wait a week. That's the best thing a television series can do for me, is to get me so invested in everything that's going on that I'm upset when the credits start to roll.
Yeah. I mean, my partner, she's been watching along with me now, because I'm on this podcast. There's weeks that I can't watch it with her, because likes of today, where it's only been out in Britain for an hour and a half, 2 hours. So it's difficult to do that when I've got to podcast about it, within a few hours. But she's mentioned pretty much on all the episodes that the episodes seem to end really quickly. And I think for someone who, she's not a Trekkie, she enjoys watching the show. She enjoys watching Next Generation and Voyager. She's not so much into Deep Space Nine, and she's not like a massive fan of it, but she enjoys it, and she's coming back to it every week on week and going, "That's finished already." So I think that's a good sign.
Yes, that is a good sign.
I've got one thing to talk about here. So let's talk Soji's mother. I mean, I called it earlier on, even though I wasn't too sure whether the mother was a person or an AI. but I was convinced that programs or kill words or hot words were being used to alter what happened with Daj, and I like that it's been used over the last few episodes as well with Soji, and the 70 seconds thing comes up here, that each of the calls made 70 seconds. It appears to be an AI program from all looks of it. My couple of questions with it. What did you think to it? Did you pick up on that on the first episode? And also, why do you think that these calls are happening if it is an internal AI? Is she contacting the AI from somewhere, or is it internal to herself? Because there are actual external calls happening. I
figured from the very first time we see the mother in episode 1 that it is not a real person, especially when it glitches a little bit and the mother suddenly starts. Key point, and the mother starts talking about how she needs to get back to Picard. And I'm like, well, that's an AI. And so I was completely unsurprised to find out that it was an AI, and they've been giving us those clues all along. I think that it is obviously in another place because the calls are going external. To where that place is, I'm not sure. Is it something that's being transmitted from that place that with the 2 moons that is apparently what they think is the nest of all of these synths? And frankly, I don't know that there is a nest of synths because there's never been any confirmation that there's anyone but Soji and Daj. But I don't know. I'm waiting to find out on that one. But yeah, I pegged her as an AI from early on. And it was confirmed in the last episode because Maddox actually talks about the mom AI wouldn't have triggered unless, her life was in danger. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think you're right with the nest thing. There's coming from a fan base of the X-Files, which is where I come from.
I watched the X-Files in the 90s too. Yes.
So the thing about the X-Files is there was a lot of point of view storytelling. So there was a lot of ambiguity in what was said. There was a lot of stuff that was probably thrown up in the air and was picked up later on or wasn't picked up, and there's a lot of confusion and things with that, but. I never really trust the narrative because it depends on how you're viewing things from their perspective. So in this example, like you say, the nest, they're running off a mythology, news. But yeah, I keep
That's
saying
amazing.
it. Keep saying.
That's amazing. Thank you.
It's okay. But yeah, they're going off what they believe is the Nostradamus in effect. That in 500 years this will happen, kind of thing, and the destroyer, and what Ramdra had said. But they're going off that from what they believe. Now, what they believe might not necessarily be true, or what they believe as the destroyer would destroy all life. How is that going to play out? But I mean, again, being an X-File and especially a Millennium fan, that people have personal apocalypses, or could it be something smaller than what they expect? Not life in the universe or whatever. So I do take those things with a pinch of salt. That they're looking for the nest. Is there an actual nest? Is there? Why would that happen? Why would they have this this idea that this is going to be this news article is going to become true, because it might not necessarily become true, that they might be labouring under a lie as well. It might be a propaganda as well. It could even be something like that to control people. So so I have that kind of same feeling as well, that you don't necessarily have what you see on screen isn't always necessarily true. And sometimes I think people get a bit agitated with certain things that they see when it might not necessarily be the actual case, and I think that's definitely worthy of pointing out.
Yeah, I as an American, I face this every single day, and in fact, I had a conversation with a coworker today who said, "This is happening," and I said, "No, it's not." And they said, "No, yes, it is. I saw this news story," and I said, "Well, did you actually research it after seeing that?" No. So I got online and I started researching, and I said, okay, so this is what actually happened and this is what's being reported. And they were 2 different things. And she said, I don't know why it didn't occur to me to actually do that. And I'm like, yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't actually occur to most people.
Yeah,
And
I'm
it's
a
maddening.
fact checker.
Yeah.
You've got to
Absolutely
go for multiple sources. You have to do multiple sources, really. You have to
Absolutely.
You know, so, but yeah, I totally get that, and especially in the framework in which we're living at the moment, it's even more a thing. I mean, I mentioned about the X-Files, and that was more of the 90s were very kind of conspiratorial, and you know, the government we weren't to trust them until obviously 9/11 happened, and then trusting the government all of a sudden had to happen because, you know, we were fighting the war on terror, and that changed the culture. You know, and similar, we've mentioned this in previous episodes here, like the attack on Mars is that kind of thing. You know, the attack on the very soul of the Federation, and that's what's caused all these issues. And, you know, it's not a utopia like it used to be. And I'm quite at home with that because, you know, it's difficult from a narrative point of view to have that utopia. Yes, we've had Next Generation, but, you know, we're not in that era anymore. We're in a world of post-truth and you know, fact checking and false news and fake news and all that kind of thing. So and news that people want as well. So, you know, if anyone's on Twitter, whatever you follow is the news you're going to get, and it's only a subsection of what you can get. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Is that you might be biased to your own opinion because of the people you follow, that you get news from that source. That source is naturally going to be biased to your beliefs or whatever. And I think that this really relates well with what they're doing with this mythology, this kind of Romulan anti-synthetic kind of thing. But speaking of synthetics or cybernetics, we do get to see Hugh. Now, this was something that half mentioned before. And it's really good from this point of view. It's really good to see a character actually happy to see Picard, because too often at the moment it's been anger, disappointment, that there's been depression. There's, you know, with 5 episodes, and it's began to wane on me a little bit. It began to be a bit like another person's disappointed in Picard. Right, okay, I get it. Don't bash me over the head anymore with this. Can someone please be happy to see him? If everyone is disappointed in him, then it's just going to be, it's just going to kill me. But it was nice to have that difference. I'm not against, as I say, having, you know, for these reasons that we need to see people angry with Picard, or you need to see that they're disappointed in that he's not done what they would expect him to do. But I did like having this bit more levity and a bit more. It was nice to have a happy moment where they embraced each other and saw each other. And it was just nice to see that. I
agree, especially since Picard and Hugh have never been what I exactly would call friendly.
Yeah.
And so I that's why I was trepidatious. I thought, how is Hugh going to react to him? And I personally felt, just in my heart of hearts, that Hugh would welcome him. But I wasn't sure. I really honestly wasn't sure. And so I was watching that scene very, very tensely.
Yeah.
And then when he's just, you know, so open and happy and gives him a hug, and I'm just like, okay, we're good. Thank you. I needed that.
And it comes directly after, as I said, we mentioned about the directorial cuts and the edits of jumping in. We even see the Queen during those edits. And I know that you've only seen it the once. I managed to slow it down and have a look when there is elements of first contact, effectively, and, you know, various different areas of that. There's scenes where, you know, you can instantly go, I know that's the Klingon Borg. That's the Klingon Borg in First Contact when he's looking up and things. So that's where they've got the majority of it. But the Queen is quite relevant because we do end up in the Queen's cell later.
Yeah.
So it's nice that comes back, and also, you know, I'll always go back to the remembrance that there's the Queens in the deck of cards as well. So we've had this now. We've mentioned the Queen, which was always going to happen, but that was nice. But talking about the Borg, I mean, I really like this journey that Picard seems to take here during this episode, and, you know, it's confined pretty much to this episode. The way that, you know, we as a species are often like quick to judge, aren't we? You know, we have our own preconceptions, and Picard is obviously going off his former knowledge of what the Borg were, and that this use of this reclamation project is really prejudiced, and his sudden realization that these former ex-Borgs, or ex-Bs as they're called, are victims. And we find out that, what's his name? Hugh. How did I forget his name? I'm getting tired. It's 10 past 1 in the morning.
I know. It's okay.
It's okay. I'm all right. I'm okay. But they find out that the ex-Bs are victims. Well, he says that, I've realised they're not monsters, they're victims, effectively. But the victims of something that they had no say in whatsoever. But also the way that Hugh says that they've got no sense of place now. They're helpless and enslaved. It's really harrowing to think that these Borg are being reclaimed, that they're reclaiming parts of their life. There's a scene where the guy looks into the mirror and starts to cry and that was really harrowing to think about. But it's a really interesting commentary, isn't it? Really, on the fact that they are victims, but there's no place in society for them because they are. People hate them. The outer world, the outer galaxy actually don't like them, and and are severely racist or prejudiced to them.
Yeah, it actually, for me, correlates with the homeless that we have on our planet.
Yeah,
that people want to believe that they are homeless because of something that they did. They did something wrong, and therefore they are homeless. And most of the time, that is not the case. And these people are lost and literally have nowhere to go. So that made it a really emotional connection for me. And it was hard for me to actually watch that scene. I started getting upset for these people because we have this problem right now in our society and we are doing nothing to help it. So it's like, at least you guys are doing something. So it just,
yeah, and I think
it made me emotional. Ugh. So,
yeah. I think, as I say, I think it's kind of like there's two main hearts of the story, isn't it? I mean, I think this one isn't the main kind of theme of this particular episode.
Yeah,
but it was nice to have that in there. It was nice to to give Hugh that kind of drive, that's what he's there for, and to give Picard a bit more of an understanding of what's going on, because he's not been in the world as such. He's been isolated. We talk about isolationism quite a lot on this podcast because that's the whole point of what where the show's going now. He's isolated himself. He's closed off, as you mentioned as well. There's obviously things that he's not happy with, that he's withdrawn himself, and people will have opinions on that. Would he really do that? But that's by the by, because this is what has happened in this show. So he's isolated himself. He has this opinion about the ex-Borgs or Borgs, as it was really stressed to us in the beginning part of the episode, in the cold open. The arc kind of finishes here, that he's realising what Hugh is doing. He's realised what this reclamation project actually is, and they are doing something that's really good. But there is this mention of the Queen as well, isn't there? We don't have a Queen anymore. We've got a Romulan Queen, and I thought that was an interesting comment.
Yes,
there's definitely something going to happen there, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. I am not entirely sure to what he was referring, and so I'm just like, I want to know what he meant. I'm sure we'll find out, but I just thought, oh, that is an interesting turn of phrase. I did not expect that. So
yeah. It's a nice little. It's one of those. You literally, if you close your ears off for a second, you'll miss it. It's
right.
Not. It was just one of those passing comments, which I'm sure it will come back. There's definitely some sort of Romulan involvement, and I don't think it's anyone we've seen, unless it is Commander O, potentially. But yeah, it's going. That's a little thread that they've just placed in there, and we finally got to this point, haven't we, with this episode, where everything, as I said to Big before, everything has come together now. The story is a lot fuller because due to it. It feels like we're moving somewhere now. We've crossed that path and people have split up again, which is fine. But it does feel like we've now crossed the threshold, and I can pretty much guarantee that things are going to start meandering and going in different directions now. And I'm really keen to see what happens there. We don't know what's going to happen in the next episode. I have seen the clip for next week, but we
doesn't
won't
tell
talk
you
about
much.
that.
Yeah,
No, it
does
doesn't.
not
It
tell
doesn't.
you much.
But,
and that's fine. I
yeah.
prefer that. I don't want to know.
But what I quite like is that the placing people in different places. You know, we know that Hugh's on the Borg cube still with Elnor, about to face that battle. We know that Picard has gone to whichever planet he's gone to, through the what was the I can't remember the name now. What was the name of the?
I can't remember. You were the one who saw it twice, dude.
I know. It was a Sicarian,
yes.
which were the. I can't remember too much about the episode, but I do remember it was the one where they had that gateway in Voyager, and it could potentially get them home, or it could get them 40,000 light years closer to home. So we get this, as I say, we talk about the journey that Picard's taken, and that kind of finishes his arc for the rest of the story, really. That's where he ends up, and we'll talk about Soji in a second, which is where she goes to do the Zhalmak, the Romulan meditation stroke hypnosis type thing, which is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah, I did. I like how it ties into the distant nature of the Vulcans. You know, that it has that element of mind meld kind of journeying kind of thing as well. And the way that they visualize it's because it is effectively a hypnosis scene in all but name, really. But the way that they visualize it with the journey that she has to go on into different areas, and that goes deeper into the mindset. And we've mentioned the fractured quick edits that's happened there. When the reveal is that she isn't human, and Narek basically says that, and he leaves the impossible box in the area with him. What did you take to that, and the way that Harry Treadwell plays that, and also the characters themselves, and where that's going to lead to moving forward? Yeah,
He acted in the way that I expected that he would during this journey. I find it interesting that they have this process because Romulans have lost their telepathic abilities. So this is really all they have to try and figure out what's going on in their own brains. And so I enjoyed watching that. And he was getting a little more aggressive, but without being abusive. I felt he was treading a very thin line there.
Yeah.
And even when he tells her that she's not real, he's not doing it in a hard voice because he's got an emotional attachment to her now, much to his chagrin. I'm guessing that wasn't the intent at all. And when he leaves the box behind, I'm like, that's not good. What's he put in the box? What did he put in the box? And then
don't say what's in the box. What's in the box?
What's in the box? That's exactly what my husband is going to say when he sees this episode.
What's in the box?
What's in the box? Yeah, he's going to do that.
I think everyone will probably do that.
Everybody.
But we do get the kind of Pinocchio review. I thought that was brilliant, the way that they've had that wooden body. Because I noticed as well on my second watch that when she comes out of the first dream, that there's like a mannequin, like a wooden mannequin on a desk table as well.
I've noticed that multiple times. Yes.
So that was a nice little nod. I hadn't noticed it before. So that was nice to see that. So the kind of Pinocchio reveal is the way I would describe it. But yeah, I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a really interesting way to kind of present the fact that she's not real. You know, what she's perceived as not being real.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure how they were going to do that. And so when they show the wooden body with her head, I went, oh, wow. It really caught me off guard in a good way. I just thought, oh, well played. I tipped my hat. So yeah, that really affected me. And I think that was an excellent way to do it because that's probably not what she actually saw. If she even had that experience at all, that is not 100%, fact that this is based on something she actually experienced, and then maybe her memory was erased. I don't know, but obviously her body wasn't wooden because she has flesh and blood, literally. She has flesh and blood and internal organs and etc. So it was a metaphor in the dream. It's like, you're the wooden boy.
Yeah, and I love a good bit of dream logic. So that was I love that. I love that scene. I also the callbacks as well. You know, like Daj saying about the chrysanthemums and things like that. That the flowers were in there as well. That, you know, they've always been implanted. Because Daj says things like, you know, that. Well, I remember my dad. My dad's always in the area, like doing his hybrids and flowers and things, and you know, having that in the show as well. Yeah. And kind of replicating that with Soji was really good. But speaking of emotional reactions, and I think this attests to how the show has grasped me in ways that I wasn't expecting. I really missed Daj when she went. I thought that they both Patrick Stewart and Isa played brilliantly off each other. And it was like, oh, you've gone too soon. No, don't do that. And when she comes through the roof and Picard is pleading, please trust me, my heart just was like absolutely went wrenching. I was like, oh no, empathy Picard is too much.
Yeah. It's just like, come on, just take his hand. Please just go with him.
Yeah.
We don't want to see you die.
Yeah. Do I trust him? You've got to trust him. Please trust him. Please trust him. Everyone's in the audience is going, please trust him. You know, but he instantly turned to that, you know, because the one thing that I really liked about Remembrance is that how empathic he was, that, you know, that he took her in, that words like he was saying, like, you know, I believe that you believe what you're saying, you know, things like that, you know, he took it on board, and, you know, because she wasn't really kind of quite there, and he was there for her, and he says, you know, and held her hand and things like that. So to see that with Soji was like, yeah, okay, don't do this to me. We've got more of this coming, I think, which is good, because that's something that we've missed over the past 5 episodes. The first episode was brilliant for that, and it then stopped, and, you know, now that he's found what he's looking for, I think that we might get a bit of that back, which is fantastic. So the only things really to talk about regarding to the rest of the episode was the Queen cell, was the way that Hugh and Picard kind of talked about that they just knew. It was kind of one of those Borg things. And Elnor at the very end, when he says, yes, I didn't listen, and Picard thanks him for that, which I thought was a nice little reverse on what happened previously.
I loved that part. I mean, we all knew that Elnor was going down there. I don't think anyone thought he was going to stay on La Sirena. So, which is one thing I'm going to bring up right now. Don't say the La Sirena, because la means the. So you're basically saying the Sirena when you say that. Just say La Sirena or say the Sirena. Don't say both. So a lot of people are confused about that, unless they know Spanish, in which case they're not confused at all.
Well, that's fine, because now you've said that. I don't know if I have done. I probably have done.
I don't recall you doing it.
Okay.
So... You know,
if not, I'll edit it out.
Excellent, because honestly, it's something that I've seen happening online, and so I just thought I would extend that to the listeners and say, this is what law means. It means the, so don't say both. Yeah. Say one or the other.
I will take that on board. Absolutely.
Yeah.
People over here say, can you place your PIN number in? And PIN number stands for personal identification number.
ATM machine.
Yeah.
I hate when people say ATM machine.
It's the ATM.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Anyway, the La Sirena. See, I did it there. Sorry, I just had to get that in there.
You're just trolling me now, man.
I am. I'm just trolling. But no, anyway, so that does bring us to the end. The end does end up really corny. They go through I can't remember the Sicarian gateway, which takes them to. They do mention the planet, and it's the name of the next episode, I believe, but I can't remember. It's Empente, I think it's called. So that's where we end, and obviously we then have Hugh and Elnor fighting, and it ends with the most corniest line ever, where it's, "Please, my friends, choose to live."
Elnor is, he has learned the way of absolute candor. That's exactly what he was thinking, and so that is exactly what he said. And it's in character for me. So
that's very true. But that brings the episode to a close. So what are your final thoughts on the episode then, and what you're looking forward to hopefully taking on board once we get into the next few episodes? What do you think? Where do you think this is leading?
I wish I could say, but I don't have any idea what is going to happen next, and I love that. I can often see patterns and see where things are going. There are certain aspects of the story that I think may happen, but the overall plot, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, and it's fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it.
They're
I don't
going to
want
take
to know.
a massive U-bend or left turn or something, aren't they? So.
Something's going to be. I mean, this was such an episode that I had no idea that they were going to be leaving the Borg cube on the same episode that they got there. I really did not think that was going to happen. And so I'm just like, oh, I was expecting a couple of episodes. So that's why I shouldn't have expectations. I should just let things happen as they happen and enjoy the ride. So I have zero predictions because I have no clue what is coming up.
We've got Picard and Soji by themselves. We've got Hugh and Elnor by themselves, and we've got Raffi, Jurati, and Rios on the ship. So we've got 3 strands there that they can pull on now. So I actually really like that idea. I know that other TV shows have done that, where you break up the group, and then you've got various different story elements that you can bring in. We are on episode 7 coming up now, so there's not a lot to get through really, but if they play the cards right and they do episodes like they've done with this one, the future's bright for me. I think it's really, really a step change in considering the last couple of episodes has been. And I'm not, as I say, again, I'm not having a diss at the last episode or the episode before. I still think they're really good. I just think that they have been struggling a little bit, and this has now focused a lot of things. But so, what did you make to? What are your final thoughts on the actual episode then of the Impossible Box?
I loved it. I thought it was virtually flawless because it's the way it was filmed, the way it was acted, all of these things. I just thought every moment was perfect, tone-wise or action-wise or whatever particular thing they were communicating at that time. It made me upset when it was over because I could have had another 15, 20 minutes of that excitement.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that they left me wanting more. That's what you want to do, so that I will come back. This is not the same as your end of season cliffhanger sort of thing. There's going to be payoff. And it kind of feels like this episode was the beginning of The Empire Strikes Back. And after this big fight, now everybody's separated. Now we're going to see how they finally come back together. Because I do believe, if nothing else happens, that they will all reunite. So...
Thank you for coming on, Brandi. Where can people find you online?
You can find me in myriad places, and I had to write a list because the last time I did this, I left something out, and people were unhappy with me. I was able to fix it at the time. It was actually one of the live shows. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm Brandywine12. Brandy's with an I. 12 is a number. You can also find me over at Trek FM doing some Star Trek Discovery podcasts. I do the main show for Star Trek Discovery, which is The Edge, with my friends Liam and Nick, who are in Australia, and that makes recording times really fun. And I also, when new episodes of Discovery start airing, I will be doing Live from the Edge with my friend Bruce Gibson, who is also of Literary Treks. We have a joke every time that Literary Treks is mentioned, you take a drink. So if there are any Trek FM listeners, they're probably doing that now. And we really have a good time on the live show. We're also right now, again, mentioning Bruce and our friend Dan Gunther. We are on Dan Gunther's live channel, YouTube channel. That's the word I'm looking for. Which is Kurt Ratz Productions. If you don't understand what Kurt Ratz means, it's just Star Trek spelled backwards. And we're doing a live Picard show every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow night. As of this recording, this is Thursday, but yeah, tomorrow night. So join us for that if you want. Come pop into the chat. We have a good time. I also do a podcast with my wonderful husband, Dave, called the Dark Corner Podcast, where we look at whatever things we love, most of which are extremely nerdy, but we kind of do it from a darker lens because we are sort of gothy people. And I also have this last one, I swear. I also have my very own podcast by myself called Headcanon, where I ruminate about all of the crazy stuff that goes on in my brain regarding all of my many fandoms. And you can find both of these podcasts at darkcornerpodcast.com. There are separate feeds for each podcast that you can find on iTunes as well. And that is it, I swear.
Well, my final question is, I'm assuming that your husband does know your true name.
He does. He actually has many true names for me that no one else calls me. So yes, I know his true name and he knows mine. It's kind of like the whole cat naming thing. There's the name that humans give cats. There's the name that cats call each other, and then there's the name that the cat calls itself. So that is exactly what was going through my head when they're talking about those names. I'm like, don't think about cats.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Brandi. Again, thank you for coming on. You can find me on Twitter at rmuldrake. That's RMULDRAKE. Coming back in April is the Millennium podcast, which I show run, which is the Time Is Now pod. And that's on Twitter at The Time Is Now. I've also got my Pick Up a Podcast where I interview podcasters and podcasting. So I talk about their podcasts, how they got into podcasting and their show. So that's currently on air at the moment. We're airing every other week. And I've just been on recently a couple of episodes of the X-Cast, the X-Files podcast, where I looked at the Patient X and the Red and Black at the time of airing from season 5. I've appeared on that a few times as well. It's part of the We Made This Podcast network, which is what Make It So is part of, and all my podcasts are part of, actually. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be setting a course for Una McCormack coming up. That'll be on Tuesday. Tony had the opportunity to interview Una on the latest book, The Last Best Hope, which we talked about a couple of weeks back. So that's coming soon. I haven't heard that yet, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how that panned out. Tony said he had a great time there, so it's I'm sure that'll be fantastic. Now, unfortunately, life has got in the way this week, which has meant that we are recording this, as I've mentioned before, just over an hour after it's aired in all the other countries, so around the world, including us in the UK. So there isn't a mailbag for this episode, as many of you won't have even seen the episode when we're recording this. But please do feel free to leave a comment on our Facebook group, Make It So. I'm sure that we'll have a great conversation in there. So by all means, jump onto the Facebook group and talk to us about that. So just before we go, there's just a few clips of what's been happening on the We Made This Podcast network. So I hope you're all enjoying the network, and there's just a little sample of what's been happening over the last couple of weeks. So until next time, everyone, remember, set a course for episode 7 and engage.
Previously on the We Made This network. We buy records.
Paul, listeners of our last episode will recall that you've been on your holidays, and it was such an odyssey that it couldn't possibly fit into one episode, could it?
No. Last week's City Report was from Los Angeles. We also headed to a couple of other places, and this week we are going to have a short City Report on San Diego.
Now, does this contain one of the things that you teased last week as being even better than...
It does.
Okay.
But where we're going to start is Feel It Records, which is...
Feel It.
Feel It. Feel It Records.
What's the it?
I don't know. That's what it's called. Been there twice now.
You didn't think to ask?
No. Well, I didn't. But we are going to have a little interview with the owner, Mark Allen, which we can hear now.
Pick Up a Podcast.
Overall, over the past year, what has been your kind of primary thing that surprised you the most within any of the films that you've seen, or any kind of like stories or things that you recognise that would be interesting for people to hear?
Chris and I have just reviewed a film which was oh my god, what's his name? David Lynch's
Short Story.
Straight Story, yeah.
Straight Story, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very generic title, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, we've reviewed the David Lynch Disney film, which I had no idea before Chris picked it that there was ever a crossover of that calibre.
Fast, Furious, and a bottle of Corona.
Each week, when we talk about each Fast and Furious movie, we're not just going to talk, ad nauseum for the whole, an hour or something. We're going to both bring 3 things to the table that we've taken from that particular film. So the first film, I'm sure there'll be a lot of nostalgia for this classic film from 2001. We'll be talking about how the series has changed. Might even talk about things like the Vin Diesel and The Rock feud and all that type of stuff. We may even get into supporting films and stuff. What are you looking forward to about this, Wes?
Well, it would be nice to sort of see through a sort of a jaundiced lens, because I'm against this sort of whole corporate branding monster. But
check out all of these shows on the We Made This podcast network. Make It So, a Star Trek Picard podcast, was created and is produced and hosted by Tony Black and Kurt North. You can find the show on Twitter at Jean-Luc Podard and on Facebook in the Make It So, a Star Trek podcast fan group discussion group. Check out the We Made This network at We Made This Pod on Twitter and on Facebook by typing in We Made This, and you can find all of our shows on our website www.wemadethispod.com. Thanks for listening.